Winter had settled deep across the western plains, laying a thick white blanket over every ridge, pine tree and winding trail. The cold was sharp enough to sting the lungs, and each breath rose as a pale cloud in the frozen air. In the middle of that endless whiteness stood a small cabin, old logs patched in places, but kept clean with surprising care. Smoke curled from its chimney, the only sign of life for miles. And this was where Ayanna lived, a 22-year-old native orphan who had built her fragile little world with her own hands. She had been alone for 5 long years now, ever since illness swept through the valley one brutal winter and took both her parents before spring could return. With no relatives and no real place in the nearby settler towns, she made her life here, on the edge of the pines, close to the old stone well that had served travelers long before towns even existed. She survived by trapping, foraging, and sometimes helping ranchers during summer when they needed an extra pair of hands. But in winter she was always alone. Today, however, she tried to keep her heart from feeling the familiar ache of solitude. It was Christmas Eve. She didn't celebrate for religious reasons. She had seen settlers decorate their homes when she was a child, and she had loved the glow of candles in dark windows, the sound of cheerful singing drifting across snow, the warmth people shared on such days. That feeling of warmth mattered to her. It made the winter feel less heavy. So she decorated her little cabin every year, whether anyone saw it or not. She hung garlands she made herself, strands of dried cranberries, pine cones she had gathered earlier in the month, and carved wooden birds shaped from scraps of cedar. She placed candles along the window shelf so the flickering glow would spill soft light across the snow. A small cedar branch, arranged in the corner, served as her Christmas tree, adorned with tiny hand-carved animals and strings of berries. When she stepped outside to admire her work, a light flurry of snow drifted down around her. Her long black hair caught the flakes like tiny stars. She studied her home, warm, glowing, alive against the cold. She walked toward the old stone well beside the cabin, bucket in hand. The rope felt stiff beneath her fingers as she lowered the bucket down into the dark. She murmured softly into the wind, "Maybe this Christmas I won't feel so alone." She never expected an answer. But one came anyway. A distant crunching of hooves broke the silence, slow, steady, coming closer from across the ridge. Ayanna froze. Travelers weren't common in such weather. She let the bucket rest inside the well and stepped back, hand moving toward the small knife at her belt. Through the falling snow appeared a tall rider on a chestnut horse, his coat frosted white, hat pulled low against the biting wind. The man seemed worn, cold, and exhausted. When he saw her tense stance, he lifted both hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not here to trouble you," he called out, his voice hoarse yet gentle. "Just need a place to rest my horse. Name's Colton Hayes." Ayanna studied him carefully. She did not recognize him from the nearby town, though she rarely visited. Still, something about his demeanor, his tired eyes, his cautious but respectful approach, did not set off the alarms inside her. "Are you lost?" she asked, her voice steady. "In a way." He slid off his horse slowly as though every movement ached. "My ranch is 2 days west. Storm got me turned around. Needed to find shelter before nightfall." Ayanna nodded toward the small lean-to barn behind her cabin. "Your horse can stay in there." Colton blinked, almost surprised by the offer. "Much obliged, ma'am." As he led his horse toward the barn, he paused, his gaze lingering on the pine cone garlands and the warm glow of candles in the windows. "You celebrating Christmas out here?" he asked. Ayanna hesitated, then nodded. "I decorate for myself. Makes winter feel less lonely." His expression softened, almost painfully so. "I know that feeling." When he returned from the barn, stamping snow from his boots, Ayanna did something unexpected even to herself. She stepped aside from the door and said, "Come warm yourself at the fire before the storm gets worse." Colton nodded gratefully and stepped inside. The warmth of the cabin hit him like a gentle embrace. He looked around in disbelief at the handmade decorations, the soft candlelight, the cedar scent floating in the air. "This," he whispered, "this looks more like home than anything I've seen in a long time." Ayanna tried to hide the flush in her cheeks. "It's simple." "No," he said firmly. "Simple as cold walls and empty nights. This is something else." He sat by the fire while she ladled warm broth into a wooden cup. His hands shook slightly when he took it. "You travel alone?" she asked. Colton nodded. "My father passed last season. The ranch hands left one by one when winter hit. Folks in town think I'm a fool trying to run the place by myself." Ayanna lowered her gaze. "They look at me like I don't belong. Town's full of people who can't mind their own damn business," he muttered. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. When night deepened, snow began hammering against the windows again, louder and harsher than before. Colton looked toward the barn and said, "I should sleep out there." "No," Ayanna said quickly, surprising both of them. "It's too cold. You'll freeze." "I don't want to impose." "You won't." She took a small breath. No one should spend Christmas alone. Colton swallowed hard, looking at her with a softness she hadn't seen in years. "Then, if it's truly all right, may I spend Christmas with you?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, you can." Christmas morning dawned silver and quiet. The storm had passed, leaving the world pristine. Ayanna rose early to stoke the fire. Colton emerged from beneath the blanket she'd offered him, rubbing his arms and smiling faintly. "I haven't slept that peacefully in months," he admitted. They spent the morning decorating the cedar branch together. Colton seemed mesmerized watching her place the little wooden birds on the boughs. "You carved these yourself?" he asked. "Yes. They're beautiful. Your parents teach you that?" Ayanna's breath caught. "No. They died when I was 17. Colton bowed his head. "I'm sorry. That's something I understand." He didn't have to explain. Loss recognized loss. They shared a simple Christmas meal, stew and dried berries, yet something about eating with another person made the cabin feel full. Colton laughed for the first time in a long while, and Ayanna found herself smiling more than she had in years. But their peace was short-lived. That afternoon, Colton said he needed to ride to town to send a message to a remaining ranch hand. He promised to return before dark, and Ayanna reluctantly agreed to go with him. Town was worse than she feared. People stared openly. Some whispered cruelly. Others didn't bother to whisper at all. "That rancher's got no sense," a woman muttered loudly. Bringing one of them into town. Ayanna's chest tightened painfully. She kept her eyes down. Colton heard every word and stiffened. "Ignore them," he murmured. But she couldn't ignore it. Not when she saw the way people looked at him for being with her. After he finished his business, she said quietly, "You should go without me next time." "What? Why?" "People talk." "I don't care." "But I do," she whispered. "I don't want to bring trouble to your life." Colton stopped walking and gently took her hand. "You being in my life is not trouble." Her eyes stung, though she didn't let the tears fall. Snow began again that evening, light at first and then heavier. The ride back grew treacherous. Ayanna's horse nearly slipped on the icy path, but Colton reached out, steadying the reins and keeping her safe. When they reached the cabin, another storm blew through. They were snowed in for 3 days. Those days changed everything. They cooked together, repaired broken corners of the cabin, talked late into the night beside the fire. Ayanna found herself laughing more than she had since childhood. Colton told her about his fears, of losing the ranch, of failing after his father's death, of living a life without meaning. Ayanna told him about her parents, her loneliness, her dreams. One night, as wind howled outside like a hungry beast, Colton looked at her across the firelight. "You know," he said softly, "I didn't expect to find something like this. Warmth. A place that feels right." Ayanna felt warmth bloom in her chest. "I didn't expect you either." "Maybe," he whispered, "we were both meant to be alone until we found each other." Spring brought new hardships. Some ranchers in town confronted Colton, claiming her presence would bring danger or thieves. Their words were hateful and sharp. Ayanna trembled behind him, but Colton stood like a wall. "Say one more word about her," he warned, "and you'll regret it." Later she begged him not to fight. He only said, "I'll fight the whole damn world before I let them push you away." And he meant it. The seasons turned. Ayanna helped him with ranch chores and he helped her repair her cabin until it was stronger than ever. She found confidence again. He found solace. And slowly the town stopped meddling. One snowy morning the following winter, Colton stood outside the cabin with snowflakes catching in his hair. Ayanna stepped out wrapped in a white shawl she had woven. Colton knelt. He held a small wooden ring he had carved himself. "Ayanna," he said, voice thick with emotion, "will you spend all the winters of your life with me?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I never thought anyone would ask me to be part of their world." "You are my world," he said. They married in the falling snow, beside the old well where they had first met. A traveling preacher performed the ceremony with the mountains watching silently. Snow drifted around them like blessings. And when Colton lifted her into his arms, laughing softly, he whispered, "Looks like we both finally found home."